She noticed what no one else did. The cleaning lady who saved a millionaire CEO. Comment BIAO from which city you're watching, and hit the subscribe button if you like the video. The conference room was spotless, polished until it gleamed. She had made sure of it. For years, that was her world. Cleaning spaces where power moved, where men in expensive suits sat around tables and decided futures. But no matter how hard she worked, to them she was invisible. Or worse. "Don't touch that chair," a sharp voice snapped. She froze, rag in hand, standing just inches from the CEO's seat. One of the junior executives, a young man who'd never lifted anything heavier than a laptop, glared at her like she was dirt on the floor. "That's not for people like you." Her stomach tightened. The room went silent for a moment as others looked up from their phones. Some smirked. Others looked away. No one defended her. She forced a small nod, lowered her eyes, and moved to another part of the room. But inside, shame burned hot against her chest. It wasn't the first time. She had learned to swallow insults, to let them cut and scar silently. The paycheck was steady. The job was steady. Survival sometimes meant silence. But that day, something felt different. Her eyes drifted to the CEO himself, a powerful man. A man whose face was on magazine covers, whose voice moved markets. He sat at the end of the table, scrolling through, his phone pretending not to notice. But she did notice something. A small detail no one else seemed to catch. His hand trembled as he reached for his water. His face glistened with sweat, though the room was cold. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his jaw tightening as if in pain. She had seen this before. Not in men in suits, not in boardrooms, but in her own neighborhood, when neighbors ignored warning signs until it was too late. Her heart pounded. The laughter of the junior executives faded into the background. All she could hear was the sound of her own breath. Should she say something? Would they laugh at her again? Would they call her the cleaning lady who thought she was a doctor? But what if she was right? What if this man, the one everyone else admired, the one who barely saw her existence, was about to collapse in front of them all? Her fingers tightened around the rag in her hand. She could feel every beat of her heart pressing against her ribs. She had a choice. Stay silent. And invisible. Or speak up and risk everything. And in that moment, as his hand trembled again, the glass nearly slipping from his grasp, she opened her mouth. What she said next would change everything. The morning light slipped through a thin curtain. In a small two-bedroom apartment tucked into the corner of a noisy city block. The walls were thin. The carpet was old, but Maya Johnson had learned to make every space her own. A framed photo of her parents sat on the dresser. A few colorful crayon drawings from her kids decorated the fridge. It wasn't much, but it was home. In the kitchen, the smell of sizzling butter filled the air. Maya flipped pancakes with one hand, poured juice with the other, and called out, "Nia, Jordan, let's move, we're gonna be late." Nia, her 8-year-old daughter, bounded in first, full of energy, hair in a puffball, socks mismatched. She plopped into her chair, grinning. "Morning, baby," Maya said, sliding a plate in front of her. "Morning, Mommy," Nia sang, already drizzling too much syrup on her pancake. Jordan dragged his feet into the room a moment later, rubbing sleep from his eyes. At 12, he had grown fast, too fast. His lanky arms and big sneakers looked like they belonged to someone older. He slouched at the table, half smiling as his sister teased him for still looking tired. Maya studied them as she worked. These two were her reason. Every decision she made was for them. She thought about the double shifts, the aching feet, the days when she wanted to collapse but didn't. She thought about how hard she fought to give them a chance at a better life, one she herself had been denied too often. "You've got practice after school, right?" she asked Jordan, sitting down just long enough to sip her coffee. "Yeah, Coach says I might start next week," he said, trying to sound casual. But there was a flicker of excitement in his eyes. "That's my boy," Maya said softly. Pride swelling in her chest. For a moment, everything was perfect. The sunlight, the laughter, the sound of Nia chattering about a school project. A slice of normal, everyday happiness. But Maya knew how fragile these moments were. When she walked her kids to school, the shift always came. The street looked the same. Tidy lawns, neatly parked cars. But the people were different. White parents with pressed suits and spotless gym clothes. Neighbors who smiled politely, then looked away too quickly. Conversations that seemed To pause when Maya walked past, she pretended not to notice. She had years of practice. At the crosswalk, she kissed Nia's forehead and gave Jordan a squeeze on the shoulder. "Be good," she told them. "I'll see you tonight." As she watched them go, her chest ached with something she didn't want to name. Pride, yes, but also fear. By the time she reached the bus stop, Maya had folded her feelings back into a neat box inside her chest. She straightened her uniform, plain black slacks, a collared shirt, shoes with worn soles. She boarded the bus with the other workers, a quiet, tired crowd. The ride downtown was long. She stared out the window at the glittering skyline rising above the city, towers of glass and steel that seemed to belong to another world, a world she scrubbed clean but never got to live in. When she arrived at the skyscraper, she swiped her badge at the security desk. The guard barely looked at her. That was fine. Most people never did. Her work began the same way it always did, dusting desks, emptying trash cans, wiping smudges from endless glass walls. The office was silent, at first filled only with the hum of air conditioning. But as employees started arriving, Maya could feel it, the shift. They rarely greeted her. Some nodded, distracted. Others ignored her completely. She was invisible. That was the role. The cleaning lady. But invisibility has its own weight. It reminded her in every small gesture that she didn't belong. In the break room, she overheard two women talking, voices lowering when she walked in. She heard the soft click of laughter that wasn't shared with her. She kept her head down, wiped the counters, and left. It wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Later that week, the sting came sharper. Jordan had been pulled aside at school again. "Disruptive in class," the teacher said. Maya sat in the small office, listening as the woman used careful words but a tone that burned. "He needs to learn discipline," the teacher said. "We can't tolerate loud behavior." Maya clenched her hands in her lap. She wanted to shout that Jordan was a good kid, that laughing with friends wasn't a crime, that he was 12, not a threat. But she only nodded, biting her tongue until it bled. When she left, Jordan walked beside her, shoulders hunched, eyes cast down. She put her arm around him, whispering, "You're fine, baby. Don't let anyone make you feel small." But inside, her anger boiled. That night, she lay awake long after the kids were asleep. The city lights flickered against the walls. She stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. The looks, the whispers, the way her son was treated, the way she herself was treated, as if her worth was tied only to the floors she scrubbed. It had always been this way. But lately, it felt like something was building, like the line between silent judgment and open cruelty was thinning. And deep down, Maya sensed it. Something was coming. Something she couldn't stop. She didn't know it yet, but within days, she would face a moment that would change everything. A moment where she would no longer be invisible. But at what cost? The day started like any other. Maya woke up early, slipped into her work uniform, and kissed her kids goodbye. But that morning, a storm was already brewing. When she reached the skyscraper, she noticed security was tighter than usual. A new guard stood by the desk, younger, broad-shouldered, and already suspicious of her. "Badge," he barked when she walked in. Maya held it up politely. "Here you go." He squinted at it, then at her. "This expired?" "No, sir. It's valid," she replied calmly, but he didn't hand it back right away. Instead, he looked her up and down, not at her face but at her uniform, her skin, her hands clutching her bag. Then, with a smirk, he finally slid the badge across the counter. "Next time, don't try anything," he muttered under his breath. Maya froze. Don't try anything? She was a cleaning lady, not a thief. But she bit her tongue and walked on. That was the first sting. The second came minutes later. She was scrubbing the boardroom table when two executives walked in. She stepped aside, clutching her supplies. They barely noticed her until one of them made a joke. "Careful," he said to his colleague, nodding at Maya. "She might steal the silverware." The men chuckled. Maya felt her face burn. She kept wiping the table, pretending not to hear. Pretending was survival, but inside, humiliation burned hot. That afternoon, she found Jordan waiting outside the school instead of on the playground where he usually was. His backpack was slung low, his face tight with frustration. "What happened?" she asked. "They said I pushed a kid in gym." "But I didn't." He shoved me first. Jordan's voice cracked, half with anger, half with hurt. And what did the teacher say? Jordan kicked the ground. She didn't believe me, said I was being aggressive. The word sank into Maya's chest like a stone. Aggressive. They never use that word for white kids. Only for boys like Jordan. She hugged him tight, whispering, I believe you, baby. I always believe you. But, deep down, fear twisted inside her. If this was happening at 12, what would happen when he was 16? Or 18? The pressure kept building. Days later, she was cleaning the executive washroom when she overheard voices. A group of employees stood outside the door laughing about something. She's always in here lurking around, creeps me out. She's just a cleaner. Don't they run background checks on these people? Probably on welfare too. My taxes paying for her to mop floors. The laughter stabbed into her like knives. Maya's hands trembled as she gripped the rag. She wanted to burst out, to scream that she worked harder than any of them, that she didn't need their pity or their scorn. But she stayed silent. Because silence was safer. But silence was also killing her. One evening, after a long shift, she sat on the bus staring at her reflection in the window. The city lights flickered against her tired eyes. She thought about the things people said, the way they looked at her kids, the constant pressure of being watched, doubted, dismissed. She whispered under her breath, Why us? Why always us? Her chest ached with a heaviness she couldn't shake. But the breaking point was coming. The next week, the company held a big event, a board meeting with the CEO himself. Everyone was tense, rushing to make sure the office gleamed. Maya had been assigned to the main conference hall. She scrubbed every inch of the room, polished the long oak table, and carefully aligned the chairs. She had just finished when one of the junior executives stormed in. A sharp-faced man with an expensive suit and a voice that dripped arrogance. This isn't good enough, he snapped, pointing at a barely visible smudge on the glass wall. Maya stepped forward quickly. I'll take care of it right away, sir. He crossed his arms, glaring at her. You people never do the job right the first time. The words sliced through her. You people. Her hands shook as she wiped the glass. Behind her, she heard him mutter to another worker. Bet she can't even read the instructions on the cleaning supplies. Maya's chest tightened. Her vision blurred. But she kept scrubbing, because stopping meant losing everything. That evening, when she picked up Nia from school, she found her daughter sitting alone on the steps, eyes red from crying. What happened, baby? Maya knelt beside her. Nia sniffled. Some girls said my hair was ugly. They said it looked like a mop. Maya's stomach dropped. She pulled Nia into her arms, stroking her curls. Your hair is beautiful, baby. Don't you ever believe them. Don't you ever forget that. But inside, fury raged. Her children were being hurt. The poison that touched her was touching them now too. The harassment grew sharper, bolder. At work, the new security guard stopped her almost every morning. Bag check, he'd say, rifling through her belongings with a smirk. One day he pulled out a sandwich she'd packed for lunch and sneered. Smells interesting. Maya clenched her fists but said nothing. In the cafeteria, she carried her tray to a corner table only for a group of employees to whisper loud enough for her to hear. Shouldn't she be eating in the janitor's closet? Laughter followed. Her humiliation was constant, grinding her spirit down. But the worst moment came unexpectedly. Late one night, Maya was cleaning the CEO's private office. He often worked late, but tonight the room was empty. She was dusting the shelves when she heard footsteps behind her. It was the sharp-faced junior executive. What are you doing in here? He demanded. Maya turned, startled. Just cleaning, sir. I was assigned. Don't lie, he snapped. I know your type. Looking for something to steal? Her chest froze. No, sir, I would never. Then why are you in the CEO's office after hours? His voice grew louder. Panic surged through her. If he reported her, she could lose her job. She could lose everything. She held up her supplies, voice shaking. Please, I'm just working. He sneered, stepping closer. That's what they all say. Maya's throat tightened. She felt trapped, cornered, and then, suddenly, the door opened. The CEO himself walked in. His eyes flicked between the two of them. The junior executive straightened immediately, his arrogance melting into a smile. Sir, I just caught her snooping around your office, he said smoothly, gesturing at Maya. Maya's breath hitched. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but the CEO raised a hand. Enough, he said sharply. His gaze landed on Maya, unreadable. Leave us, The executive nodded quickly and scurried out, shooting her a glare as he left. Maya stood frozen, her heart pounding. The CEO looked at her for a long moment. Then without a word he sat at his desk and opened his laptop. The silence was suffocating. Maya whispered, "Sir, I wasn't—" "I said enough." The words cut like a blade. She nodded silently, gathered her things and walked out. Her legs trembled the whole way down the hall. She had never felt so small. That night, as she tucked her kids into bed, her mask finally cracked. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she kissed their foreheads. Jordan noticed. "Mom, what's wrong?" She shook her head, forcing a smile. "Nothing, baby, go to sleep." But when the lights were off, she sat in the dark living room, clutching her hands together, whispering a prayer. "Lord, I don't know how much more I can take. Please, give me strength." Her chest heaved with silent sobs, and deep inside, she knew something had to give, because the world wasn't just ignoring her anymore, it was crushing her. The boardroom had never felt so suffocating. The long polished table gleamed under the fluorescent lights, lined with executives in tailored suits, all staring at Maya like she had no right to be standing there. Her uniform was simple: navy slacks, a plain shirt, and the cleaning badge clipped to her pocket. She wasn't supposed to be in this room during daylight hours. She was supposed to stay invisible, sweeping around their feet when the offices were empty. But tonight she stood at the head of the table, holding the one thing no one expected from her: the truth. On the projector behind her, medical records glowed across the screen. The CEO's name, William Harrington, printed bold at the top. Numbers, vital signs, symptoms, dates, all pointing to one undeniable fact. Maya had noticed what no one else did. He had been on the brink of collapse and she had saved him. The silence was deafening. Finally, a voice broke through. His assistant, the same woman who had mocked Maya in the hallway weeks earlier. "This is absurd," she snapped. "She's not a doctor. She's the cleaning lady. She probably doesn't even know how to read those charts." A ripple of laughter spread across the table. Cold, dismissive, designed to cut her down. Maya's hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "I may not have your degree. I may not sit in these leather chairs, but I see things every day. Things you ignore because you're too busy looking past me, and what I saw, what I knew, saved his life." She turned to William, who sat, pale and silent, at the end of the table. His recovery had been slow, his pride even slower to heal. For weeks he had avoided acknowledging her role, but now with all eyes on him, the weight of truth pressed down. The assistant slammed her hand against the table. "Are we really letting her speak here? This woman should be grateful she even has a job," gasps echoed. Some executives nodded, in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably. The room crackled with tension, a storm ready to break. And then, William rose. Slowly, unsteadily, but with determination. His voice, when it came, was quiet at first. "Enough." Every head turned. "She's right," he said, locking eyes with Maya. "I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for her. While all of you dismissed me, ignored me, humored me, she saw what none of you could. And she saved my life." Shock rippled through the room. The assistant's face twisted, red with fury. "You can't mean this. You're going to give her credit." "Over us? Over me?" William's voice hardened. "Yes, because she earned it. More than any of you." Maya's chest rose and fell, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. For the first time, the truth cut through the lies. But just as relief threatened to wash over her, the doors to the boardroom burst open. 2 uniformed security guards stepped inside. The assistant pointed directly at Maya. "There she is," she barked. "Arrest her, for trespassing." The room erupted into chaos. Maya froze, caught between vindication and danger, her fate hanging by a thread. And in that breathless moment, everyone knew the story wasn't over yet. The boardroom was silent. The air that once crackled with hostility now felt heavy with shame. The black cleaning lady, once invisible to these powerful people, stood taller than them all. The CEO, alive because of her vigilance, spoke with a voice that carried both gratitude and guilt. "She saved my life," he said firmly, his eyes scanning the room. "And you all treated her like she was nothing." The words hung there like a verdict. No one dared to laugh, mock, or whisper anymore. The white assistant who had humiliated her shrank back in her chair, her arrogance stripped away under the weight of truth. Justice did not come through fists or revenge. It came through truth revealed, undeniable, and raw. For the first time, the room saw her not as a cleaner, not as someone disposable, but as a human being who had shown more courage, intelligence, and compassion than all of them combined. News of the incident spread beyond the walls of the corporation. The story of the woman who noticed what no one else did, and saved the life of a millionaire CEO, became a symbol. It sparked conversations in households, on social media, even in the press. People asked, why did it take a crisis for her, humanity, to be acknowledged? Why was she invisible until her actions forced people to see her worth? The CEO made a public statement, not only thanking her but announcing sweeping workplace reforms. Diversity, equity, and inclusion were no longer buzzwords on paper. They became commitments enforced with action. The assistant who had mocked and attacked her was fired. But more important than policy changes was the impact on everyday hearts. The cleaning lady's story reached children, families, strangers across the city. To young black girls, she became proof that strength doesn't come from titles but from truth. To men and women facing silent discrimination, she became a reminder that dignity can break walls of ignorance. And yet, she remained humble. When reporters asked her how it felt to save the CEO's life and spark a national conversation, she simply said, "I just did what anyone should do. I saw something wrong and I couldn't stay silent." Her quiet words echoed louder than any speech, because in the end, this wasn't just about one woman saving one man's life. It was about a society forced to confront its blindness. And about the question that lingered in every heart. How many lives, how many truths are we still ignoring, simply because we refuse to see the person standing right in front of us?